What we're trying to do today, I think, on behalf of the direct selling industry, is to inform you exactly what we do. And interestingly enough, I mean, I'll tell you the story of how Traveling Vineyard came to be. But interestingly enough, I mean, what we do is we support micro entrepreneurs. You're able to enter into direct selling for a very low startup fee. In our particular case, you can become a wine guide, and I'll explain our business in a second, for $99, which gives you a kit that allows you to conduct your entrepreneurial business kind of on your own terms, to do as much or as little as you like. So the entry fee is really low. Compared to a franchise, I think a franchise can be literally hundreds of thousands of dollars and has more risk to it. But the thing that we found is that when people enter into the direct selling industry, even though they can come in for this very low startup cost, that you have to have this entrepreneurial mindset to be able to be successful, and that requires some hustle, right? So we see that we have a fairly big churn in people coming in who are excited about it, and then run out of entrepreneurial steam, and they're not successful. And of course, it's easy to blame everything on a failure, right? Like, oh, I didn't have this, I didn't have that. But in general, what we try to do as a company is to support everybody in this entrepreneurial role so that they can be as successful as they can possibly be. So these independent contractors represent a brand. You're going to hear today from three of us actually about our different organizations. And the beautiful part about direct selling is you have this tremendous amount of flexibility, which is great. And we always like to say in the industry, you work by yourself, for yourself, but not by yourself. So just to kind of scope out the industry in general, there's 6.2 million direct sellers in the United States. 5.2 million, really the majority of people are what we call part-time sellers, less than 30 hours a week, and 1 million are full-time or more. But what's really fascinating is that there's 36.6 million customers, 10.5 are discount buyers, and 26 million are what we call preferred customers. And in general in the United States, I mean, out of the 6.1 million people, the industry is generating $35 billion in retail sales, which I think is a phenomenal number. So that's pretty impressive. So one of the things that the industry is affected by is credibility and trust. And you guys, how many of you have had a family member, a friend, or a relative who's been involved with a direct selling company? Mary Kay, Pampered Chef, Tastefully Simple, just that's it, huh? Just a couple of people. There we go, a couple back there. One of the professors has actually been to one of our events, so I was interested. But many of you, in general, I think a lot of people are exposed to direct selling because a family member or friend or relative has been part of it. The industry's been marred by fast-talking, quick-witted, promoters who talk about these get-rich-quick schemes and pictures of mansions and big yachts, and they sell this dream that isn't necessarily achievable. So I think from my perspective, what we always talk about is we have a really interesting entrepreneurial opportunity that you have to hustle and work for. And we look at people who want to make some part-time income, whether that's $200, $300, $400, $500 a month, conducting our wine tasting events, to allow them to have a great night out, having a dinner with a friend of theirs or a spouse or significant other, making a car payment or contributing to dance lessons or things like that. So it's a very low-key promotional activity that we talk with our future representatives about. But the direct selling industry has gotten together and partnered with the Better Business Bureau and has created a regulatory council that will look at all of the industry players who are members of the Direct Selling Association, which by itself provides you some credibility, but also they're going to look at people who are outside of the industry who aren't members of the Direct Selling Association, and they're going to be able to enforce if they're a bad actor in the marketplace, which I think is great for the industry. So, this whole thing kind of comes down to, are you trustworthy? Are you credible as a direct selling company? And we've worked really hard to try to earn people's trust by being real and authentic and transparent and laying it out exactly the way that we think it should be laid out. So what I thought I'd do today, just for a few minutes anyway, is I'd like to pretend for a second that I'm talking to you about becoming a direct seller with Traveling Vineyard. So I think the first thing I should start out with is I'll kind of tell you my story about how it came to be, because I think you might be interested in it. And what happened was I was hired as Chief Marketing Officer for a large catalog wine marketer. And what had happened was they had been very successful. Their sales had gone up to 60 million. They were publicly traded. It was called Geerlings and Wade. And if you were going into a retail package store or even a state store, as you have in Pennsylvania, in the 1970s and 1980s, you would have gone in and it would have been primarily beer and spirits, and wine would have been way back in the back of the retail outlet, and it was kind of Boone's Farm. I don't what we were drinking back then. I mean, it was not very good stuff. Pretty bad swill. And as that landscape changed, so Geerlings and Wade was a premier provider of international wines that were very, curated and really good stuff. And so they marketed it direct mail to people in their homes. They'd get the catalog, they'd order the wine, and they did particularly well. But the landscape with retailers changed. Some of the big box retailers started to feature wine. Costco's of the world were doing really well. If you went into a retail store today to give, just to have a compare and contrast, primarily wine is taking up a large part of the real estate in these retail stores. Spirits are there too, and beer as well, but wine has now become a big item in the retail stores, so that affected this mail order catalog company. So they brought me in to try to figure out how to increase sales. Well, when I got there in 2001, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this thing, because the sales are starting to decline. It had gone from 60 down to 30 million, and the thing was kind of in a spiral down. It was hemorrhaging money, and it was kind of in crisis mode. So I was on the phone with a friend of mine about 2 weeks into the job, I was complaining to him, what am I going to do? I was kind of scared, actually. And he said, my wife does a part-time job with Pampered Chef. And Pampered Chef is a company that does home demonstrations of kitchen utensils. Is anybody familiar with Pampered Chef? Just a couple of you? Okay. So, like you, I didn't know who Pampered Chef was at the time. And I did a little bit of research that day in 2001. And all of a sudden, I uncovered this company that has 65,000 independent distributors, and they're doing nearly $1 billion in retail sales, doing home demonstrations of kitchen utensils and pizza stones and all sorts of crazy stuff. And I said, my goodness, if they can do that with kitchen utensils, we should be able to pull off a wine tasting experience in someone's home. So we had to work through kind of the regulatory stuff. And we did that, and we conducted our first home wine tasting in October of 2001. And we had 7 people in attendance, and the woman who was the part-time Pampered Chef consultant helped us conduct that wine tasting. We bought 5 bottles of wine. We took people through kind of the tasting experience in their home, and we sold $500 worth of wine and wine accessories that tasting. So I said, wow, that's really interesting. So we did it again. I thought it was too good to be true. Same exact thing happened the next time we did it. So from 2001 to 2005, we built the organization up from nothing to over 2,500 independent wine guides, as we lovingly call them. And we were kind of off and running, off to the races. But the company was, the mail order catalog company had this big, expensive infrastructure with warehouses and tons of employees. And that thing was just continuing to kind of do a deep dive in hemorrhaging cash. But Traveling Vineyard, which was the new channel, an entrepreneurial new channel inside an existing company, was starting to do really well. But all of the cash was going toward this kind of hemorrhage that the mail order catalog wine company was having. So what happened was the company had to recapitalize. And as part of that recapitalization, they brought in a new CEO. And I had a new boss that day. So I'm this prideful entrepreneur, employee inside the company who'd built something that I really fell in love with. This direct selling community is just something that you can really get passionate about. And it sucks you in, and you become part of this kind of community and culture. And I'd never fallen in love with a business before, but this little thing that we'd created that had grown, I was absolutely in love with. This new guy comes in, and he and I completely disagreed about literally everything. And I have some advice for you as a 63-year-old talking to you guys who are just about to start your career. If you argue with your boss, I just want to let you know it usually doesn't work out too well for you. So if you asked him, he fired me. If you asked me, I'd say I quit, but it was like losing my child. You know, this was something that you had created. So I went and found another job, and 3 years later, because of the way he culturally ran the company, because this has to be, direct selling organizations are culturally driven. You have to inspire people. They're not employees. You have to inspire them and recognize them, and he just didn't see it that way. He thought they were employees and they should live by a rule book, and that's just not the way this thing works. He drove the company and they filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So I was sitting there at my other job that I really didn't necessarily love, like I did Traveling Vineyard, and I ended up buying the assets out of bankruptcy and restarting the business once again from scratch. So the only part that I want to share with you there for you wannabe entrepreneurs someday is that I was 55 years old and I took 100% of my life savings and put it back into this to re-engage and restart the company. And the story could have gone a couple of different ways, right? One is it doesn't work out and I'm 55, can't find a job, and it could have been pretty bad. The good news is that it did work out, and 9 years later, you know, we have a pretty thriving organization with over 5,000 independent wine guides doing in-home wine tastings. So our business model, gang, is this. We're a federal winery with 2 production facilities, one in California and one in upstate New York. We have no agricultural element, and what we do is we opportunistically are able to buy bulk juice, if you will, from farmers or from other producers that have a disproportionate amount of inventory available. We bring it into the 2 manufacturing facilities. We have a winemaker who blends it, carefully crafts it, and we have at any given time probably 25 different varietals available for sale through our home tasting events. I find that this experience that people have by being in a home with all of your friends, your social circle around, and one of our wine guides coming is this really enriching experience, right? I mean, you don't get that when you walk into a retail environment. I think people walk in, the store employees aren't necessarily helpful. Maybe they are in some cases, but in general, they're not. And I think what people do is they go and they look and they go, oh, what a great label, or they get stuck into one particular varietal. Maybe it's a sweet that they really like. But I think in our experience, when our wine guides come, we introduce them to 5 different types of wine, and we're able to expand people's palate, and they really get a kick out of the whole social experience. And then you know how it goes, right? I mean, you have a couple of tastings of wine, and the crowd starts to loosen up a little bit, and it's kind of a really fun experience. So that's the business model. In general, things haven't changed since 2001. Every time we have a tasting event, we sell about $500 worth of product. From a regulatory standpoint, our wine guides have no inventory whatsoever. They purchase at a drastically reduced rate the 5 samples, bring it to the tasting, and when they have a qualified event, we give them a bonus to reimburse them for the sample set that they had to purchase. And it's been a wonderful business model for us. So one of the things that I did want to tell you is that as far as us building credibility with potential customers or potential wine guides who become our distributors, not only are we a member of the DSA and abide by their code of ethics, which is really strenuous and rigid to be able to kind of pass muster and get through that, but if you go onto Glassdoor, we have hundreds of reviews from people that have had experience with us. We're an A+ with the Better Business Bureau. We survey every single person that comes to one of our tasting events, and on our homepage we have over, I think, 6,000 or 7,000 reviews. We don't edit them at all, and we have a 4.8 out of 5 star rating, which I think is really phenomenal. So you know, when you're a real company doing real business and you got people's back, that's the way that you keep your reputation, you build trust. And you know, we just support our wine guides because they're in front of these customers. We provide all this entrepreneurial system for them to take advantage of, and we have to have their back. We cannot make them look bad. So we take good care of them and we take good care of their customers. So this is just a little presentation that I make to people who potentially are thinking about becoming a Traveling Vineyard wine guide. I thought it might be interesting for you guys to hear it. I'm not trying to pitch you, although I'd love all of you to become wine guides with Traveling Vineyard someday, but that's not my intent here. I just want to have you become familiar with kind of the industry and the business and how we look at it. So we run on a weekly basis what we call a taste of the business. And what that is that our wine guides are out socializing, they're out leveraging their social networks, and many of the people that they come in contact with are hosts for a potential wine tasting, or they're guests at a potential wine tasting, but all of them are potentially someone that might decide to become a wine guide. So the taste of the business is the ability for us to kind of communicate with all these people who our wine guides interact with and say, hey, if you tune into this, you'll be able to get an introduction to the company. So I talked about the DSA ethics, so I'll skip that. But and I told you my story, so you understand how we came to be. And then I think the biggest thing from a cultural standpoint is we've always said that we have two check boxes in our world. The first one, is it good for our wine guides? And the second checkbox, is it good for the company? And the commitment that I've made to our community of wine guides is that we will never check the box good for the company without being able to check the box good for our wine guides. We can always check the box good for our wine guides, but we'll never just check the box good for the company without making sure that our wine guides get something out of it as well. So I think that's really important as kind of a guiding principle. As a moral compass for the organization, and it makes our wine guide community of 5,000 independent wine guides become, they're committed to the organization and respect us for that. One of the things that happens in an entrepreneurial direct selling company is that you are paid based on your efforts and your success. So it's commission-based, and we have a program that's fairly straightforward where every month you start your counter from zero, you run your tasting events, you market different subscription programs that we have available, and depending on the volume that you're able to get to, you can earn up to 35% of your sales that you've accomplished during the month. So, for some people, our top 10 every month will make $2,000 or $3,000. In general, I would say 80% of our population who are active in a given month make around $200 to $300, which is fairly meaningful for most people. And that's really kind of the backbone of our direct selling company. And I think many direct selling companies in general is the folks' ability to make a couple of $100s a month. It's very meaningful for people. It pays for dance lessons, it pays for karate lessons. Our profile of our wine guide is a 25-year-old to 55-year-old female primarily. And they're typically at some different stage of their life, right? They've gotten out of college and they have a student debt load that they want to take care of, or that beginning job does not allow them to make ends meet with the big city apartment that they're living in, I mean, you guys are going to be going through all this stuff. So I look at direct selling as a great way to help people make ends meet and give them a community to belong with. And I think we do a great job of fulfilling that particular mission. We have other people, a stay-at-home mom who's got kids and they don't want the full-time career, they want the flexibility to ebb and flow with how life's going. We have many stories like that, and a lot of them are committed to the business and they work more on a full-time basis and make that $1,000, $2,000 a month, which is really meaningful. So the other thing that happens is that you can just be a wine guide and do wine tastings, which we call your personal business. But the other thing that happens in the direct selling world is that you're able to invite people to become part of your team. Now, here's where some of the misconceptions pop in, because if I'm sitting on the airplane and I'm explaining what I do and I go, well, and people can build teams and they go, oh, it's a pyramid scheme. And I go, no, it's not a pyramid scheme. You don't get it. What it is that Rick invites Gene, right, to become a part of my team. I mentor, I coach Dr. Nichols to do really well and support you. And as she goes out and conducts her wine tasting, the company pays me a percentage of what she has accomplished in her personal sales. And that's how it works. It's like corporate America, where you have a CEO and senior vice presidents and vice presidents, and it goes all the way down. So that's really a pyramid, right? Well, a direct selling organization is the same thing. You have a team leader who's been able to leverage their social networks and invite people on and be attractive and build a great team out, and the company pays them a percentage of whatever the team has done. So that's very different than a pyramid scheme. I think the distinction between a great, legitimate direct selling company, the way I look at it right now, is that our sales are made, 80 to 90% of our sales are made to consumers. Illegitimate or sketchy direct selling company, 80 or 90% of their sales are made to their distributors, to their independent contractors. And what has happened, the industry has gotten tainted in the past, and what we're trying to do nowadays with all this regulatory, self-regulatory and self-policing, is that in the old days, Rick would have to take inventory of 100 cases of wine and it would sit in my garage. I wouldn't have the entrepreneurial spirit to be able to keep doing these events, and I'd be stuck with all this inventory. That doesn't happen in our organization. You can't take inventory on. We ship the inventory direct to the consumers after you've gotten an order, so it's incredibly legitimate that way. So I think that's kind of the two distinctions that I'd like to make, where direct selling gets a bad name because of what they call this inventory loading. People buy a lot of inventory, they're unable to move it, and the legitimate companies don't do that. Or they have a program where you do buy inventory, but the company agrees to buy it back if you aren't able to sell it. And I think that's morally right and ethically right. So the other thing that we do is we know that if someone enters into direct selling and we give them the roadmap of the behaviors that you have to do to be successful, which is have 8 events in your first 100 days, add a partner in wine, sell one of our wine club subscriptions. All of these things are really good behaviors that will keep people engaged and interested in our business. So we have this incredible Fast Start program where we're giving bonuses and gifts and merchandise and wine credits for people to have if they do the appropriate behaviors in their first 100 days, and we found that to be very, very successful. We're actually give people about $850 in different kind of bonuses if they achieve these different behaviors in their first 100 days. So that's been very helpful. As entrepreneurs, our 5,000 Wine Guide entrepreneurs, they need to have a system that they can rely on. So we invest heavily in technology. When you go to, one of our wine guides goes to a wine tasting today, in the old days, back in 2001, they used to fill out a paper form, an order form, and they used to fax it into us. And then we had a whole group of people that were inputting the orders. The technology has changed so much now. We have an app, and people pull out their tablets, they hand it to the consumers. You guys have tasted the wine and had this great experience. And then bingo, you do your own order right online, which helps us with regulatory issues as well. So we've invested millions really at this point into technology in order to support our Wine Guide entrepreneurs. And then I think we've become really good at opportunistically finding wine around the world. We're able to pick stuff off. There are some great brands out there that have an overabundance of a product that they have not bottled yet, and we're able to go around and selectively pick these things off. We create our own labels, like this particular one is 5-string. We probably have about 100 trademarks right now on different wine and wine varietals that we've been able to do. And what we do is we submit all of them into contests, and we win, and we get gold, silver, and bronze medals, and that helps with our product credibility as well. So that's been important. And then one of the great things that we've done, I think, is we've created a subscription plan, almost like a wine club, if you will, where people are introduced to our wines at the tasting events, and then our wine guides are able to market this subscription service. And one of the great things about it as an entrepreneur is that if you're not able to do an activity to make money, if you can, you can make money while you sleep with this thing essentially, because if you market the subscription programs, the company takes care of firing them all off and delivering them. And at the end of the month, you get to look and go, wow, my volume's super high because I did the heavy lifting of selling the subscription services, and now the company just supports that by delivering it. And then, one of the big challenges I think we had as an organization is that if you're selling purses or spatulas like Pampered Chef or cosmetics, other things out there, I think people feel that they don't need to have an incredible level of expertise to do that. But with wine, I think we have a little bit more of a barrier because people are like, well, it's kind of snooty and hoity-toity, and you really, there's people that have degrees in enology, and some of them are sommeliers, and there's kind of a mystique around it. So we tried to break down this barrier, and we give our wine guides these wine tasting notes that are very brief, but make them sound really pro. And if I was to do, I haven't done a wine tasting in quite a long time, but if I was to do one today, I would still take that tasting note and get up in front of the crowd and deliver my wine tasting presentation, which only takes a couple of minutes before you start sampling. But really what we found is that if you can give people a little bit of information and then they actually sample the product, that's great. So we've tried to make it easy for people. And one of the things that we did was we worked with the first master sommelier in the United States. His name was Eddie Osterland, and we created a program called Sommology. What Sommology is that he identified 35 light bites, a walnut, a goat cheese, buttered popcorn, a potato chip, that would go with a specific varietal for the whole food and wine pairing experience. So when our wine guides show up with the 5 varietals, they have 5 light bites that pair extremely well with the wine. And we like to think that this experience, people just rave about it. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I learned so much. This was phenomenal. And so it's great. So we have this whole Sommology kit that goes along with that $99 entry fee that you become a wine guide with. And then, of course, one of the big jobs that we have is we have to have ongoing training and support. We have a national convention every year that many of our wine guides attend with a lot of hoopla, a lot of fun, but a lot of education and training. We have regional meetings. I was in Pittsburgh a year ago. We had a regional with 100 of our wine guides here. And then we have online training as well. So we're educators, just like you're here getting educated for your career. In the future, we educate our wine guides and try to give back to them as well. I want to make sure I'm not running out of time here. Okay. And then one of the other things that we have been very successful for us is we have done these tie-ins with charitable causes. It really started early on where we had one of our leading wine guides, her husband passed away from brain cancer. So we went out and found an association that provides charitable giving to the American Brain Tumor Association. Many of our wine guides are military spouses. They're relocated all the time. They have to start over from scratch. And so we did a big thing this year with the National Military Family Association where we provide scholarships for military spouses to further their education, which has been a great thing. So we try to tie in our community with our charitable cause, and that has worked out really well for us as well. And then importantly, everybody, the big thing that we saw when I first started the company, and the reason that I fell in love with direct selling and the direct selling community, is what I've come to call the 5 Fs. We didn't make these up. What we heard from people was they would go, I came to Traveling Vineyard or a direct selling opportunity for initially what we would call financial reward. And that is the part-time income, the medium-time income, or the full-time income. And after I got here, I had so much fun running the wine tastings, being with my community of hosts and their guests. And it just, for a stay-at-home mom with kids, getting out of the house and doing a wine tasting event with adults is a really fun thing to happen. So we found that our community was telling us that they were just having a blast doing this. The second thing that happened was they're able to make friends. Your social circle expands. It's really interesting. When one of our wine guides has their first tasting event, there'll be, let's call it 10 people at the event. And she or he may or may not know all of those 10 people. But we know statistically that if they have this successful event with 10 people, that 2 people will want to have their own Traveling Vineyard tasting, and they invite another circle of friends. So that's how this thing expands. It's word of mouth, referrals. People, these social circles just keep expanding. I told one of the professors last night that one of our wine guides who lives near here, near Slippery Rock, her circle expanded so much that she's actually driving to the suburbs of Pittsburgh now because it just kept expanding and running, driving an hour or so to run tasting events near Pittsburgh. So this friendship thing is really important to our wine guide community. The third thing is flexibility. If you're a part-time or medium-time worker, independent contractor with Traveling Vineyard, the ability to have this thing ebb and flow with your life is really important. Many of our wine guides say, I'm not going to work on weekends. I'm only going to hold tastings on Wednesday and Thursday nights. I'm only going to have tastings once a week on Sunday afternoons. So this ability to be able to kind of construct your own schedule and do things your way has been really important. And the fourth one is fulfillment. I think people learn about wine, they learn about actually getting their sales skills improved. And even though sales can kind of be a dirty word for the profile of our wine guide community, everything that you're going to do in life is all about kind of selling and marketing, right? I don't care whether you're a tech major or a healthcare major, whatever it is, you're going to be involved in pitching and selling and marketing ideas and concepts. And so I think people find fulfillment in being able to be successful, recognized, hone their skills at different things, and we give people that opportunity. Then lastly is financial reward. And we don't ever have pictures of yachts and mansions, which the bad part of the industry does. We talk about the ability to pay for your kids' dance classes, the ability to go out and have a nice dinner with someone special, maybe the ability to make your car payment using the part-time income from a Traveling Vineyard side hustle. And then there are some people that do exceptionally well, but it's a small percentage, and they work full-time at it, and they've built significant team sizes. We have a woman in Ohio that has a team size of 1,500 people. So, it's substantial, and she makes close to $200,000 a year. But she's one person out of 5,000. And I think the industry has gotten in trouble because what they do is they take that individual and they make them the poster child for the organization. But that's not truthful because it's 1 out of 5,000. So we try not to do that. And we also are very careful about how we make the earnings representations, which are crucially important for credibility and trust in the community. We talk a lot about a why. If we have people becoming a wine guide, we want to make sure that they know what their why is. Because if you fully understand your why, then you're going to stay true to the business, and you're probably going to have the entrepreneurial hustle to bring it to life. So if your why is, I am overloaded with student debt, I got to get rid of this thing, and a side hustle can accomplish part of that for you, that's a pretty strong reason. If your budget's limited as a stay-at-home mom, because you're a young family, and this can help provide for maybe babysitting or maybe for further education, whatever the case may be, that's a pretty strong why. So we're always talking to people about what's your why and bringing them back to that, because that keeps people engaged and motivated and inspired. And I think, if you're a purpose-driven company like we like to think we are, we have more engaged independent contractors, and we're better at innovation and transformational change, just like they say in the Harvard Business Review. We did an interesting program where we have the compensation plan, which is at dollars. And then we have Thrive Points. We try to encourage behaviors. So you guys are so familiar with gamification, both in business and for entertainment. and you get badges and rewards when you do things online or different things that you're interacting with. And so we've gamified our independent contractors where they get awards and badges for doing the correct behaviors, and they also get points for that, and they're able to take those points and turn them into travel experiences, shopping. So it's almost like we have another whole suite of benefits beyond compensation to reward and inspire our folks. And then I think it was important as an organization to have a value message. And so I want to introduce you to my mom and dad. That's Edgar and Sally Libby, by the way. So they passed away both in 2017. But the story that I want to share with you is that I went home, I was 60, and they're in their late 80s. And I said, I was not the best child. I wasn't the best student like all you guys. I probably, could have been a better son, although I think I was pretty good. But I said, I've never asked you for advice. And I looked at my dad and I said, what would you tell me now, when I'm 60 and I've never asked you for advice? And he said, work hard and save money. And I said, well, I can do the work hard part, but to save money, I love to spend. So that was hard for me. And then I looked at my mother and I said, well, what would you tell me, Mom? And she said, be kind. And she definitely was an incredibly kind person. So I talked to our community about those values, and we've kind of rallied around and embraced the work hard, be kind philosophy. And I think that that's been a really fun thing. And it's driven by my parents, which makes it extra special for me. And the big challenge that we're facing right now, you guys, is we have to continually enroll new wine guides. It's the flywheel. It's the fuel for our engine. Because we have a third that are coming in, a third that are working the business, and a third that are either inactive or probably on their way out. So the challenge for us has always been enrolling new wine guides. And of late, this gig economy, where you can have an Airbnb, you can be an Uber or a Lyft driver, you can do part-time stuff for Etsy, you can do work on Fiverr, you can drive for Amazon Flex, you can go walk dogs with Rover. I mean, there's a lot of gig options out there. How many of you have a gig side hustle right now? Nobody? You're too busy with school. One? What do you do?
Looking into Amazon FBA.
Oh, the Flex? Oh, okay, great. So there you go. I mean, and you guys, are you guys sophomores, juniors, seniors primarily? So you're looking at graduation in the not too distant future. So, here it comes. I mean, you're all going to face it. There's all these gig opportunities out there. I think the distinction with this thing, and I'll use Uber as an example, is I take my car, I'm fed leads, and I decide to accept them or not accept them. It's fairly straightforward. With Traveling Vineyard or another direct selling company, I have to go create my own leads. I have to do my own hustle. I can actually build a team. I can't build a team with Uber. And so that, I think, is a big differentiating factor with a direct selling organization, is that I can improve my economic standing, my lot in life, because I have the opportunity to build an organization, where with many of these gig opportunities, you do not have that capability. It's all based on your personal transactions. But you don't have to do the hustle initially, because all the deals are fed to you, the leads are fed to you. So that's a pretty important distinction.